Due to the graphic nature of this program, viewer discretion is advised.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for tuning into today's broadcast. It's the Monday, August 24th, 2026 episode of the Marco Jure Show, the only show where the facts are facts and hard truths thrive. Hope you're all well on this Monday, folks. Last full week of August as September slowly comes to an end. You know, time flies when you're having a lot of fun, doesn't it, folks? And it always flies on this show. And on that note, let's get right down to brass tacks today because we've got a lot to discuss today. I've got a lot to cover with you, and no one else in the legacy media will probably share this with you. Therefore, I want to go over this with you so you understand what's going on, because the legacy media is dead and certainly is untrustworthy at that. But one of the biggest news stories happening today is that President Trump and his Treasury Secretary Scott Soros Bessent are now throwing one final Hail Mary at Iran right now in order to kind of divert from this military action that has not been working, in the hopes of coercing the Iranians into a surrender. Now, this so-called economic D-Day is set in motion now to crush Iran with new sanctions and leaving them no room to breathe since we cannot defeat them on the battlefield. This is what this is all about. This is the last-ditch effort that's taking place right now. Now, it's come in some time as a historic event, economic D-Day. It sounds important, sounds intense, right? And by the way, I have no doubt this is going to cripple the Iranian economy. It's certainly, I don't denounce that from happening. But is this actually going to work? I don't think so, folks. I gotta be honest with you. I don't think so, and I'll tell you why in just a little bit. But instead of using diplomacy, negotiations, free market capitalism, we're now resorting to putting new sanctions, new tariffs on our foes, and of course our biggest trading partners alike. That's where we are right now in America today. So anyway, the crushing economic D-Day sanction, this comes out of the New York Post, will now be unleashed against Iran and will be the single greatest financial offensive ever marshaled against an adversary. That's what Scott Bessent's saying today. It's unbelievable. Now, the imminent announcement of the impending financial penalties follows Bessent's comments on Friday that will collapse the regime. So this is what it's all about, folks, right? It has nothing to do with oil. It has nothing to do with this. Well, we want the oil to move. But this is all about destroying this economy because we couldn't do it. And the only way to defeat the Iranian government is to collapse everything. So in other words, we've got to collapse the regime. We're back now to regime change. This is what it's all about. Killing the Ayatollah Khamenei didn't work. Bombing them for 40 days straight didn't work. Hitting 13,000, if I'm not mistaken, different targets all throughout Iran, the size of Western Europe, didn't work either. Didn't cause collapse. The government is still very much intact. And they're still defiant just as ever, by the way, just so you understand this. No one is coming on their knees begging for a deal, just so we understand each other here. Now, President Trump now has warned that any nation providing any type of lifeline to Iran will face their own economic consequences. This is where we are, folks. This is really unprecedented times. I got to be honest with you. When I say this to you, I mean, this is unprecedented times we're in right now. Putting economic sanctions to a T, and of course, the secondary sanctions on any country that does business or helps or buys or makes it easier for Iran to succeed with their economy. Now, let me read you President Trump. This is what he said on Truth Social this morning. This is via Fox News. He said, "No one has given the Islamic Republic of Iran a greater opportunity to make a deal than me. Tragically for them, they have failed to take it. Therefore, today I am announcing the most crushing economic operation ever taken against any country. This will be economic warfare and isolation on an unprecedented scale." And he goes through the typical Trump rhetoric. Their Navy's gone, the Air Force is gone, military factories are now in rubble, currency's worthless, countries hanging on by a thread. Let me go and explain to you what exactly is happening right now. This is what these sanctions actually will do. This is going to, again, not only just hit the Iranian economy, but any entities by any country, any bank, any shippers, any other government that continues to enable Iran's oil trade, cash transfers, or their shadow banking networks. So we got to understand where we are putting our money right now. This is where it's all at. These secondary sanctions are on foreign countries and any companies, again, whose banks, their airports, businesses, their government alike, this is what any type of lifeline means. So anyone doing business with the Iranians, we're going to target you next. So again, this is obviously tremendous when you think about it, in terms of the consequences it would have if we were to do this. Now, I might agree with you if this was done, say, a couple years ago, 10 years ago. This would have a dramatic effect on the Iranians. It's a totally different country than it was in 2015, 2016. This is a different country. I want you to understand that. That's very important when we talk about this, because we couldn't defeat the Iranians militarily. This is what it all stems down to. We can't beat them militarily, so let's try to beat them economically. And by the way, we've had sanctions, crippling sanctions on them in the past, so it's nothing really new to the Iranians. They're used to this. Earlier in the year, we tried to devalue the Iranian rial, and we did a pretty damn good job because we had the Iranians out in the streets protesting the economy. Now, of course, that was hijacked by the Mujahideen al-Khalqs, the Kurds, and what have you, attacking police, killing innocent people, and of course fomenting this idea that the Iranian government are out there killing innocent protesters, which never happened, by the way. That didn't work. Okay. So now we got to put these sanctions now on countries that are working with the Iranian government. So now we're going to start targeting Iran's remaining oil reserves. So this would be expanding sanctions on shippers, refineries, brokers, tankers, and currency exchangers. So we're going to go after everyone, which brings me to the next point, though, folks. 90% of Iran's crude goes to China. So now this, again, historically, this is what happens. So are we really going to isolate China from the U.S. market? Is this what we're going to do? We rely on China for many things, folks. They trade a significant amount of money with us every single year. A lot of our businesses have been outsourced to China. Goods that get shipped to the United States every single year. Again, we need China. It's a huge market too, by the way. So are we not going to trade with China anymore? Is this what's going to happen next? And let me just be very clear with you again, I'm telling you folks, as it's coming to me, China has already really essentially ignored these new sanctions. They've written it off right now. What is taking place right now is the United States is actively isolating itself. I know that sounds ridiculous, but that's what Scott Bessent is doing. Is India just all of a sudden not going to trade with Iran? Is Pakistan not going to trade with Iran? Oman? Russia? I mean, are they all just simply going to say, you know what, Iran, you're a part of BRICS, you're an ally with us, but sorry, we got to go with the United States. Not going to happen, folks. Not going to happen. And let me just say this to you as well. BRICS is gaining in power. We know that China right now has a banking system that has over 100 countries now enrolled in it, and they're trading in the Chinese yuan. This is the same time the petrodollar is failing as time goes on, folks. So when we think about where we are, we don't have the same leverage we once had at one point. Understand this. This isn't 10 years ago, 15 years ago, or even 5 years ago. BRICS is moving in a direction away from the United States. We are isolating ourselves when we do these sorts of things. We don't have the economic leverage over these countries because we're not producing like we once were. Our dollar isn't worth as much. That's why you're seeing Japan and China and other countries that buy up our treasury bonds. They're moving away from it. They're starting to dump them. We've got to understand where we are now. We're isolating ourselves from the world, not the other way around. We think there's going to be a great scheme that works. It's not. China's already said, by the way, they're not going to abide by it. I believe them when they say that. The Iranians have already come out and said similar things, that they understand what's going on. And in other words, they're used to this sort of tactic that's played against them. Again, folks, a country that we decided to invade, we couldn't have regime change, so now we're going to have regime change through economic consequences. Not going to happen. I think this is going to fail on the Trump administration. And obviously, Trump and Bessent, I think, will have to reverse course very, very soon. I think that's just going to be the way it works. How long will we be able to sustain that? Again, stopping all these countries that trade with us, that also trade with Iran, it's just not going to work. Especially China, Russia, India, Pakistan. It just simply is not going to work. Again, the crackdown on Iran's shadow banking networks, same thing. So the Treasury wants to kind of dismantle any exchange houses, shell companies, front firms, you name it, they want to get rid of all this money laundering to the hundreds of millions of dollars into the Iranian revenue system. This is what they want to do. They want to try to block all that. Again, not going to work. I don't believe it. And finally, they also want to do this. They want to keep up the naval blockade, which, by the way, I guess the memorandum of understanding is completely the memorandum of misunderstanding, because why are we still doing this? Why are we still wasting our time with ships 500 miles away from the Strait of Hormuz to try to block traffic coming into the Persian Gulf, particularly going from Iran to whatever said country they're going to, most likely Asia, most likely to China? Again, that's not going to make the Chinese very sympathetic to the United States, I would have to say. And again, threats on tariffs. So in other words, we're going to throw tariffs on countries like Turkey or Iraq or India, by the way. Again, try to do business that way, Again, use the threat of tariffs. I mean, that's working so well with the Canadians to our north. I mean, Trump just had to try it with, some of these other countries now that continue to do business with Iran. Again, I think, folks, this has not been well thought out, just like this war. I think it just puts caution into the wind. And I think we're going to struggle as a result, especially in a time when, again, we're not producing like we once were. We certainly don't produce everything that we need here in the United States. And let me just remind you one more time. I know I've spoken about this several times with you. Let me say it one more time, though. China controls all the refining of rare earths in the world. So if China comes out and says, well, you know what? If you put these secondary sanctions on us, if you try to isolate Iran economically, then we are going to make sure that you never, ever, ever get any of the rare earths, and there's tens of them that we need for our munitions in the United States military, by the way, for our weapons to work. These particular magnets are only refined in places like China, Kazakhstan, a select few other countries, but China controls over 90% of that market, and they refine ours for us right now. So China can simply go to Kazakhstan and say, we got a better deal for you. Trade with us instead. Oh, you want to join BRICS? Come on in. You're now part of BRICS. This is the leverage that the Chinese can have, by the way. That's just what I'm going to say to you on that. They can do this. They can completely shut down our military, especially our munitions, from being produced. And I don't think, folks, I need to explain to you how devastating that could be to our national security and defense if that does happen. But right now, they've already come out and said this to us. And we're not doing anything to get refining inside the United States. We can mine the rare earths here. We've done that before in the past. But we have to refine it. We're not refining any of it in the United States. Why that's taking place, I'm sure I have no idea. Could be part of the Green New Deal. I don't know what the hell it is. The Green Revolution. I don't know, but we should be getting on that. We need to get on that. That should be number one priority right now. On top of bringing down the price of inflation, goods and services, and of course, the oil supply chain issue in the United States. Among that, refining rare earths should be one of our top priorities right now. I do want to say this to you as well. Again, this is the Iranian response to everything that has taken place right now. Moshe Rezai, this is a gentleman who is now the head of the National Security Council inside of Iran. This guy is very close to Mojtaba Khamenei. This guy was very close with the IRGC early on in the Iran-Iraq war, by the way. And this is what he took to X and said on Sunday. This is what he said. He said, if the economic war continues, not a single drop of oil will be exported, neither through the Strait of Hormuz nor from anywhere else in the Persian Gulf. Iran will regard any country's participation or support for America's economic war against the Iranian people as an act of war. So does this sound like the Iranians are defeated? Does this sound like they're going to capitulate, or that they're begging for a deal for, the 50th time right now? Of course not. Of course not. They're standing firm to what they have said, and that is what everything that's inside of the Memorandum of Understanding, folks. There's no other way around it. No other way around it. This is where we are right now. And now we're trying to isolate several of our trading partners. This is what it comes down to. Whether, it's China or India or Pakistan or Russia or Japan, we're going to start isolating these countries. This is what's happening right now. And I guess nobody can see it. Everyone thinks this is a brilliant idea. I don't, for one. I don't think it's going to work. I've heard other economists say the exact same thing. This is likely going to fail. And again, Trump and Bessent will have to say, obviously, we're going to stop this. We're just not going to do it. Again, it's a waiting game. That's what it's going to come down to. Anyways, folks, here is Scott Bessent. This is just from a little while ago via Fox News. Let's take a listen to him announce these new sanctions that he so brilliantly has placed on the Iranians. Take a listen.
Iran now faces a very clear choice with only two paths before them: complete global isolation and a subsistence economy, or a path back to normalcy with an opportunity to rejoin the global economy. Today, we are launching Operation Economic Outcast to foreclose every other option available to the Iranian regime.
Not going to work. Simply is not going to work, folks. Again, I say it to you because this is exactly what is the outcome of this. The Chinese already said they're not going to do it. Why do you think the Russians would do the same thing? Why do you think the Russians would side with the United States over Iran? We know that, for instance, Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi has traveled to meet with President Putin to speak about the war and what have you, economy and all that. Why would they all of a sudden just turn their backs on the Iranians? They're one of their number one trading partners, too. Again, this is a complete alliance between the Russians, the Iranians, the Chinese. You can throw in North Korea to that, too, as well. All these countries are coming together. What did I just tell you? BRICS is getting massive. It already equates for, 43% of the global economy, 43, 44%. That number is only going to continue to rise, folks. And the United States economy, I believe, is 23%, if I'm not mistaken. Still significant, folks. I mean, it's a quarter of the global economy. Massive economy. Don't misunderstand me here. But we should be promoting free trade. That's what we should be focusing on. Diplomacy. Good trade deals. Not just, hey, we're going to slap tariffs on you because we feel like it today. That's never going to work, folks. And even Canada right now, Canada is simply saying, you know what? We're just simply going to throw on some tariffs on you again now. And this is what it's come down to. Anyways, here's Bessent again on these secondary sanctions that he thinks are going to work on countries like China and India and Russia. Take a listen.
Any entity that facilitates money laundering on behalf of Iran will be removed from the U.S. dollar system. The clock just started ticking. The new sectoral sanctions determinations issued today target 5 of Iran's most vital lifelines that it exploits in other countries: digital assets, technology, gold, aviation, and shipping. These measures broaden secondary sanctions risk for anyone foolish enough to continue conducting business with this regime.
There it is, folks. There it is. So China's put on notice. Russia's put on notice. India, Pakistan are put on notice. Yeah. So I guess Pakistan needs to, get rid of those 6 new trading routes they put in. I guess the Belt and Road Initiative going into Western China that was, again, installed by the Chinese. I guess we got to, stop that project, close those rails. Close the route to the north by the Caspian Sea to Russia. I think everything's going to stop now. All these countries are going to capitulate to the United States for a dollar that none of them even want anymore. Again, look at their actions. They're starting to drop the dollar significantly. They're not buying it up as they once did. They're not buying up our debt, which is another major problem for the U.S. economy right now. Just thought I'd share that with you. So, folks, we got to look at where we are with all this. And again, yes, this is going to be devastating to the Iranian people. The government is going to survive one way or another, in some capacity. There's not going to be a revolution inside of Iran. Now, we're looking at the rial today. Again, significant damage to it, absolutely. We're seeing the rial dropped to 2.02 million to the U.S. dollar as a trading opened up today on the currency markets. And of course, Iran's official central bank rate stood around 1.5 million rial to the dollar. But then again, the market rate goes by what most Iranians pay. That's what it comes down to. So the currency's already been under significant pressure from the United States and Israel since the attack on the Iranians on February the 28th. So they've faced double-digit inflation, negative growth. They've faced this before. They've been isolated before. I don't believe it's going to work. And I think they're saying this significantly because they know they have their allies to support them. Notice we had a naval blockade, but China still got oil. Nothing happened to those ships, folks. Notice how the Ansarallah in Yemen, which we call the Houthis in America, notice they allowed the Saudi ships to only pass through the Bab el-Mandeb Strait if it was heading to China. There's an alliance here that's happening. And that alliance is growing every single day as the United States isolates itself from the Gulf Arab states in the region. And let me just say this to you folks. No one else is going to tell you this today. This is, again, groundbreaking news, folks. Take a listen. Speaker Ghalibaf of the the Speaker of the Parliament inside of Iran, had met with Field Marshal Asim Munir, who, by the way, President Trump speaks to regularly, and he announced the invitation to Iran to join the Mecca Agreement. This is an agreement between Turkey, Saudi Arabia, and Pakistan. So understand this. The Iranians have been invited into this agreement now. That took place very recently in Mecca. That's why it's called the Mecca Agreement. And by the way, all top leadership from Mojtaba Khamenei, President Pezeshkian, Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi, again, they're all going to be listening to the Iranian National Security Council. Again, they're having a meeting today, probably right now, I'm assuming. It's sometime today, at least. It is later, of course, in that part of the world, to discuss this agreement and see what they want to do. So let me remind you all this. This would mean that an attack on one country is an attack on all countries. So listen to this. This just simply mirrors the NATO Article 5 agreement. So in other words, if someone attacks the UK, then they've attacked every single one of these NATO countries, the 30 plus of them. It's a war waged on all of them. So now we have Turkey, we have Saudi Arabia, and we have Pakistan now. Now we're introducing, or at least the Iranians have been invited to join this pact. So if you attack Iran, you have now attacked Turkey, you've now attacked Saudi Arabia, you've now attacked Pakistan. And let me remind you all, folks, that Turkey is the largest army in all of NATO. That is true. So I think what you're seeing happen here is a realignment of what takes place throughout the Middle East. This is what it all comes down to. And notice how they're moving away from the United States, though. The Iranians have not said anything about, again, any new deals with the United States. They've made their positions well known. If the United States wants to make a deal, this is what you got to follow. And, of course, President Trump probably from the beginning disregarded it, never had any intention of following through with it. Certainly by his actions would tell us that, sadly enough. But this brings a whole new standing inside of the Middle East. There are pacts forming, almost NATO-like pacts, if you will. Again, sharing intelligence. We're talking about military exercise, joint military exercises. We're talking about technology collaborations. This is growing throughout the region, and again, it puts the United States, certainly the Israeli hegemony in the region, probably crashing to a halt very, very soon, folks. And who's to say that wouldn't stop Syria from joining? Wouldn't stop some of these other Muslim countries, Jordan, Yemen, Oman, again, all these countries of the region, folks, to come together as one. That would mean the Israeli, by the way, Lebanon too, by the way, introduce Lebanon into this group. That'd be maybe a little bit more tricky, but again, it could certainly happen. There are pacts that are forming, and it's not with the United States. It's not with Israel. The Abraham Accords are dead in the water. They're not coming back, by the way. But what you are seeing are other countries making moves right now. They're moving on. They're standing up to the United States. They're standing up to Israel. Well, that's what it's all about here. So I wanted to share that with you folks. By the way, this is, again, very important. And just on a side note, we also have important information coming from the Crown Prince of Bahrain, meeting with the number 2 in the military of Pakistan now. This is a joint defense pact they would like to get with Bahrain. This is not the Mecca Agreement, of which the Iranians have been asked to to join, rather. But all signs are now showing the Gulf Arab states, again, are moving away from the U.S. This is what it's all about. The presence in the region is now crashing to a halt, folks. There's no way around this. This is going to happen. We know that the Saudis and the Qataris have already made it very well known They want the United States to pack up and leave from their country. There is no benefit to being a partner with the United States, folks, and President Trump has made that very clear. These countries were getting bombarded. Their economies are struggling as a result of this war. The transfer of goods from port down in their countries because of this stupid war that we waged on behalf of Israel. Again, folks, I tell you how it is. That's what it's all about. That's what it comes down to. So it's the United States that is isolating itself from the rest of the world, not the other way around. The rest of the world is moving on. I'm sorry to say that to you, folks, but this is what it's really all about. So, again, lots of very important information here today. Just wanted to get that out to you. We'll see how long. I think I give it a week. I give these secondary sanctions and these sanctions about a week. You'll hear from China, of course. I know President Trump is supposed to be meeting with President Xi in the upcoming weeks or months. We'll see how that all plays out here. But I think what you're going to see here, folks, you're going to see a quick reversal of these secondary sanctions, just like so many of the other policies we've had. I mean, how long was Operation, what was it? Epic Freedom or Epic, whatever the hell it was, to open up the Strait of Hormuz? That lasted, 2 days? Nobody took the United States up on it? Nobody would move their ships? Now we're getting information that there's 10 million barrels of oil coming out of the Persian Gulf every single day now. Really? The traffic's up 50%? It's unbelievable. This is all when the Iranians are still controlling, militarily at least, the Strait of Hormuz. A bunch of nonsense. All rhetoric. All rhetoric. All right, folks, let's move on. We've got to talk about the tariffs now with Canada now, because as if to make matters worse, now we have to shift over to this now and discuss this blunder that's waiting to happen. And President Trump has made it clear that, again, we don't need the Canadians. He said we don't need Canada. Now we're threatening our neighbors to the north with more tariffs on cars and trucks. And at a time when we have inflation, I find this interesting. We're coming down with very high inflation now, folks, sitting around 4.7%. The numbers are only going to continue to increase, especially as the oil supply continues to squeeze. Make no mistake about that. And by the way, I haven't checked the oil prices yet today. When I checked earlier this morning, it was around $92 per barrel for Brent crude. Has moved very little. Very, very little from where we were on Friday when it was about just over $94 per barrel. Now we've got these sanctions coming on the Iranians. Okay. And now, of course, the Iranians said nothing's going to be moving now. We're not going to let you even try to think about moving your oil anywhere. This is what this. So it's coming to a head, folks. And again, I always told you this is going to get much, much worse before it gets any better. So we haven't even seen it yet. And if J.D. Vance is correct and we're only halfway through it, we've got a long haul ahead of us, folks. Believe me. So now on Monday, President Trump has escalated his trade war with Canada, threatening to impose a 50% steep tariff on all Canadian cars, trucks, auto parts, and steel. The new tariffs will go into effect on January of 2027. Now, what's the point of this, folks? Why did this happen all of a sudden? He's come out and said Canada will be treated like a state. He said Canada will be treated like a state no longer. I don't even know what that really means. On trade and in any other ways, also, they are among the worst nations in the world to deal with. They feel entitled, and yet we don't need Canada. They need us. They do 95% of their business with the United States. With us, the exact opposite. So then why put the tariffs on them then? What is so significant about putting these tariffs on a country that we don't even need? Why not have the free flow of steel or oil, folks, that we get from Canada? By the way, Canada is now coming out and saying instead of selling their crude to the United States, they're more likely to favor selling it to the Chinese folks. Oh, that's going to be good for business. That's going to be very good for the United States. We get our heavy crude oil that comes in from parts of Alberta, if you will. Very rich in oil, very rich reserves. We look at the landscape of where that crude comes from. The entirety of that region is just covered in it. Figuratively speaking, of course. So now we're going to cut off another oil trading partner with the United States? Is this what we want to do now? Notice how he didn't put any tariffs on any imports of oil coming in the U.S. So what he wants to do now, this is amazing to me. Trump asked Canada to address U.S. concerns over dairy, alcohol beverages, and motor vehicle duties. And, Carney basically said, go pound sand. And now we're coming through and putting these tariffs on the Canadians now as if we need more higher pricing on imports coming into the United States. 50% now. This is what Trump has stated right now. Yep, this is it, folks. Again, I don't think this is going to go very well. Again, I think he's going to have to reverse track on this one. Trump said the new tariffs were necessary to close the $60 billion budget deficit that exists between the two neighbors. Again, stupid. Stupid. This is stupid. The reason we have a trade deficit with Canada is not because they're ripping us off, but because we trade more with them. I'm sorry, they trade more with us than we trade with them. That's what it comes down to. That's why there are imbalances. That's why we have a trade imbalance with China. It means we have to start producing more. Now, of course, I'm not saying they don't have any tariffs on goods that come into their country. But we have to understand something. The reason it's that significant is because they're trading with us more than we traded with them. That's what it comes down to. By the way, I think they're our second largest trading partner as well. So when we come out and say now we're going to put, tariffs on certain things, I think he said to the tune of maybe $20 billion worth of goods that come in. That's what it comes down to. Canada responded not by capitulating, but by firing back and threatening now retaliatory dollar-for-dollar tariffs starting on September 8th, very soon. This is all coming right directly from Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney, saying on Saturday that his tit-for-tat measures will include tariffs on steel, dairy, appliances, agricultural equipment, pulp, paper, and electronics. Yep, he said that the United States asked too much and offered too little during the trade negotiations that they had. By the way, Carney called him up to speak with him, to President Trump. And he also called the Trump administration's proposals uneconomic, unfair, and undermined the net benefit for Canada. So, again, folks, you see, again, he's to the left too, by the way. But you see someone who's saying, you know what, this is not a good deal for Canada. So we're simply just not going to do it. And if you want to throw tariffs on us, we'll throw more tariffs on you. We'll go back and forth. It's not the other way around, folks. And by the way, let me just be the first to say to you that Canada does rely heavily on the U.S. economy. So in other words, when our economy struggles, their economy tends to struggle as well. Again, it kind of goes together, if you will. They move together in cycles, okay? That's just the way it is. And most of their population is right on the northern U.S. border. That's what it comes down to. So yes, there is trade that's important. Don't get me wrong. But their trade with us is also very significant as well. It's two. It takes two to tango. This is the same thing right now. And by the way, we need that oil, especially. That comes from Canada, Keystone XL pipeline, folks, which we should get up and running soon, I would hope. Trump has talked about it. I don't know why we haven't done it yet. Why is it not up and running again? Cheaper means to bring in oil to the United States when we need it now, more than ever, because we don't produce any heavy crude in the United States. Just thought I'd share that with you, folks. So I think, again, this is just bad policy. This is the lack of negotiations. This is the lack of diplomacy that we continue to find here in the United States. And we simply think we'll just bully people around. Right? We'll just come in. We'll start bullying people. And we'll get them to capitulate. And, we'll get them to take off certain tariffs on their goods. And, we'll do the same thing to them. We'll make it much, much worse. This is not working. Okay, this is not working the way we intended to work. Sometimes it works, rarely, but sometimes it works. Most of the time it doesn't. Think about the article I mentioned with you on Friday's show. When I talked with you specifically about the ranchers inside the United States. Remember what I told you? We're not going to start bringing in beef from South America. Likely most of it's going to be coming from Argentina. President Trump likes Javier Milei. So therefore we're going to get this low-quality beef coming from Argentina to flood the market, of course, to bring prices of beef, particularly ground beef, to go much lower. You'll all remember this gem I played for you on Friday's show.
Question is, what do you have to say to U.S. farmers who feel that the deal is benefiting Argentina more than it is them, as they are
Argentina's fighting for its life, young lady. You don't know anything about it. They're fighting for their life. Nothing's benefiting Argentina. They're fighting for their life. You understand what that means? They have no money. They have no anything. They're fighting so hard to survive. If I can help them survive in a free world, I happen to like the president of Argentina. I think he's trying to do the best he can. But don't make it sound like they're doing great. They are dying. All right? They're dying.
What do you mean by...
I don't know what that has to do with us, though. Now, you said that a while back, though. We're going to start bringing in this beef because we're not producing here like we once were. Our herd is the smallest it's been in 75 years. So instead of helping out local ranchers, accommodating them with production costs and what have you, bringing in more herds into the United States and the such, getting the U.S. Department of Agriculture to actually help lower the prices so we can incentivize new ranchers and new farmers to make a profit. I mean, the dairy market for farmers right now, they're losing money. And when this happens, what do they have to do? They have to start selling their herd in some capacity in order to make money because they're not making a profit off the oil they produce. I'm sorry, the milk they produce every single day. It's a net loss to them. There's no profit that comes from them because the price of feed, of water, the electricity, the property tax, all that goes into running a farm. All that gets eaten up because it costs more than what they make per 100 pounds for milk every single day. So instead of trying and finding a way for them to make more money, what do? We don't do anything. We don't let farmers, again, set their own prices. Now, some farmers have become privy now, of course, to producing on their own, selling it online, and doing it that way, which seems to be a much, much better alternative than selling it to a bigger producer, where they're getting, the price set by the U.S. government that is, not allowing them to make any sort of profit. And what happens as a result? Again, as I told you before, they either have to start selling their herd every week or parts of their herd. Whenever they get calves or feeder cattle or dairy cattle that's not producing as much milk, they sell for beef. They have to start doing that more often. And then we wonder why the herd size are getting smaller and smaller. But the other thing they can also do, they can go take out more loans. Well, again, folks, if you're not producing a profit, how much longer can you keep taking out loan after loan after loan, causing the average American farmer to go bankrupt? That's a big problem. They should be able to turn a profit, folks. That's what it should be. But we're not focused on that. We're not focused on making it cheaper for farmers and ranchers to, again, make a profit off their commodity, whether it be beef or dairy or what have you. We're not doing that in the United States, so that's causing them to go out of business. It's not incentivized. Why would you go into a market? Okay, let's say, you want to start up a farm. Why would you start a farm if you knew, for example, every time I produce, this cow I have, it costs me $3 more, or whatever it may be right now. Last I checked, it was about, $2.50, $3 more to feed that cow, house that cow, water down that cow, all the other pricing that goes into a farm than what that cow produces for you every single day by how much milk it gives you. So again, it just begs the question, why is the U.S. government setting that price so low so the farmer is not making a profit? Why is the U.S. Department of Agriculture doing that? And why, instead of focusing on American herds, are we focused on bringing in cheaper beef? Usually that's less quality, by the way. Usually that is contaminated with God knows what that isn't even in the United States food supply, to bring that in the United States. Why are we doing this? Ask yourself that question. Why are we so keen on helping out the Argentinian economy versus our own American farmers, really one of the biggest constituencies for President Trump? Ask yourself that question. What the hell are we doing? I think it's a reasonable question, folks. So I say the same thing now. So I guess if Carney throws in these tariffs on us now, we're going to have those tariffs on all the goods coming in. So we're going to have auto parts that are now coming in from Canada, 50% tariff on that, 50% tariff on steel in the United States. Anyone starting up a business? Anyone building? So now it's going to cost you 50% more to have that same amount of steel now. This is no good. This is no good at all. These are problems, folks. Problems again. And by the way, where is Congress on this? I want to ask you this question. Where is Congress on all of this? That we can just decide. The president does not have the power given by the Constitution to just decide he's going to have this tariff war with Canada. If anything, he's got to go through the Congress. It's got to be passed by both houses. And then, of course, he would sign that into law. At least then we would have some representation. At least we can have some say in this, saying, no, we don't want these, steep tariffs now placed on Canadian goods, whatever it may be. And then we have a vote on it. But at least we can reach out to our representation and say, we don't want this. But we don't even have that option anymore because President Trump, I guess, can just wake up and decide what he wants to do with these tariffs whenever he feels like it. And that's not the way our government is supposed to be functioning, folks, just to be clear with you on that. So, again, I think it's another big loss for the Trump administration. I don't believe it's going to work. Jamieson Greer, our U.S. Trade Representative, came out on Saturday and said that Canada declined to finalize the trade deal under the terms agreed earlier this week. Well, again, no kidding. What did Mark Carney just say? He said it's uneconomical, it's unfair, it's unreasonable. Why would he sign that? Again, stupid. Sometimes, and again, understand this, sometimes when you are leading your country, you have to look and say, do we really want to flood American dairy with our dairy inside of Canada? Do we really want to flood it with this product or that product? We have to ask ourselves those questions. That's why I've told you before, if Trump really wants to incentivize business in the United States, quotas are the way forward. There's nothing wrong with doing that. Quotas on the amount of cars that come in every single year. Quotas on how much beef you import every single year. That incentivizes to produce in the United States. And then also incentivizes these companies from abroad to say, this is a big market. This is much bigger than inside my country. Why don't I develop inside the United States? Why don't I bring my car factory in the United States? Why don't I do that instead? Because I'm going to have the market. People want the car. It'll be cheaper. I don't have to pay all these, tariffs now. Maybe there's a little tariff on the car coming in. Fine, as long as it's reasonable. But when you throw a 50% tariff on something, that's going to, again, offshoot the pricing on the market, and then the prices have got to go up. And I thought it was funny, too. When I read that to you on Friday, I said, notice how he's taking off the tariffs on the incoming beef they're trying to import in the United States. Why? Because that's going to drive up the cost of the beef, and he wants the price to go down. So I'm glad, again, we're all in agreement that tariffs are indeed a tax, and they also rise prices. Just wanted to share that with you, folks. All right, let's move on. Again, let's move on to another very important topic right now, folks. I do want to share this with you. I was going to talk with you about this on Friday. I didn't have time to get into it, and it will take me a little bit of time. Let's jump into it and see how long this takes. There's a case right now about a woman named Lindsay Clancy, and she strangled her 3 young children in January of 2023. And as of late, this case has gotten some traction. A lot of people are speaking about it and what took place during the case. And women in general are starting to come out in droves to support this woman. And I found it very shocking. Again, I wasn't following the case really until really about last week. And I kind of read a lot about it over the weekend and what have you to figure out what's going on, what happened. And they're trying to label what took place as a problem with mental illness. And by the way, I understand women, when they give birth, their hormones are all out of whack. And you know me on this show, folks. I want you to have good physical health, good mental health, good emotional health, spiritual health, all that. Very, very important. It's all good to be well balanced. No doubt about it. And I was looking at the case, and it did seem like she probably felt anxiety. I don't doubt it. But the case itself, even if she felt anxiety or depression or, felt a certain way about her husband or her children, doesn't excuse the fact that she killed her children on January 24th of 2023. And again, it's a heartbreaking case, folks. She took her 3 children into the basement and strangled each of them with exercise bands, strangling them to death. All the kids were 5 years and under, by the way, the youngest being 8 months old. A devastating case to read about. This took place. And by the way, this is a former labor and delivery nurse, too, by the way. Just understand this. But the big talk is, of course, was this justifiable? Is she supposed to be criminally responsible for what happened? Her defense, by the way, doesn't even deny that she did this, by the way. But they're suggesting that she was struggling from postpartum psychosis, along with postpartum depression, and that's what caused her to do this. So she wasn't in the right mental faculties, which caused her to kill her children and then, of course, try to kill herself. Now, let me say this to you. Let me say this to you before we talk about the women that are coming out in support of this monster. The day that this murder took place, right before this happened, she sent out her husband to do 2 errands. She sent him out to go to CVS to get medicine for her, I believe, and go get food from a restaurant that they ordered from. So she sends her husband out, right? She knows this is going to happen. And then she knowingly takes her 3 children into their basement, and as awful as this sounds, folks, strangled her children one after another. Obviously, the other children witnessing what was going on. I mean, I can't even imagine this situation. I don't even want to imagine this situation. Well, this woman strangled her children to death and then tried to kill herself. But what's really important, and this is what you have to understand here. Again, she knowingly sends her husband out, knowing that she was going to do this. She's not crazy. She knew exactly what she was doing. It's not like she blacked out, caused a fire in the house and the house burned down. You say, geez, what the hell are you doing? She was very much aware of what took place. And how do we know this? Because when her husband returned, he found her outside. I think she had jumped off out of a window, if I'm reading it correctly, trying to kill herself. She wasn't bleeding out or anything, but she was there. He's talking to her. He goes, what's going on? Where are the kids? And she said, they're in the basement. So she knew exactly what happened. She knew what she was doing. She wasn't crazy, folks. Yet still we had women dressing in pink over the weekend outside of the courtroom making heart signs with their hands in support of this woman who murdered her 3 young children. Let me tell you why this is very devastating, first of all. Number one, of course, we address mental health. Obviously, I believe this woman was on a certain cocktail of different medication. Obviously, there are side effects of medication, certainly. I'm not denying that at all. I always take a homeopathic approach to anything. I rarely, I don't even take Tylenol, folks. That's how toxic I think all of these pharmaceutical drugs are, to be honest with you. That's neither here nor there. She made a decision to do this. Nothing else. And by the way, she woke up that morning, she worked out, she did this, she streamed her on Facebook, her workout, or what the hell she was doing. This is a woman who knew exactly what was going on. So it's not like she didn't understand what took place. She knew exactly what was happening. Nothing excuses. And by the way, even if someone has a mental episode, it does not abstain that person from responsibility. And by the way, I've had some wonderful interactions over the weekend, folks, with some of these ladies who go out and support this woman on, social media. And I asked them all the same question. I said, first of all, they're trying to blame the husband on this, which again is stupid. First of all, he's not even at the house when this took place. We have camera footage of him being in CBS. We have camera footage of him being inside the restaurant right at the time the forensics suggest that the children were all killed. And of course, Lindsay tries to kill herself. And I see some women even saying, well, he convinced her that she did it. I said, where are you getting this information from? She admitted to it. The defense agrees she did it. Now they're trying to say she's not criminally responsible. I say she is. The prosecution agrees with it, of course, that she killed the children. All the forensic evidence, again, suggests exactly the same. That she was the one in the house at the time when the children were killed. Not the husband. And I'll implore all of you folks, if you would like, to reread the transcript of the husband on... I think you could hear it. Actually, I don't know if you could hear it anymore, but you could read the transcript. And I read it, and folks, and it hurts. It's heartbreaking to hear this. When you hear him on the phone, again, they have the transcript of who he's speaking to on 911 about what's going on. He's asking her, where are the kids? Where are they? And she's like, what happened? And she's, in and out of it. But she tells him they're in the basement. The authorities arrive. He runs inside the house, and he's screaming, she killed the kids. It's heartbreaking, folks, that this happened. And again, I always tell you, folks, when you're in a relationship, you always give your spouse 100%. There's none of this 50-50 nonsense that people try to say to you, or the happy wife, happy life. That's ridiculous. When you are committed to one another, you, again, always work with each other to the fullest you can. Now, I don't know the whole dynamic of the relationship. I don't know it. But I do know that nothing in the relationship indicates, again, the husband simply said when he testified, she never talked about hurting herself, never talked about hurting the children, never talked about having these sorts of thoughts that she wanted to do such a thing. And, the women on Instagram, though, the women on TikTok, they just love accusing the husband, saying because the husband's a Gemini, it must have been him. And I think she's a Leo. I don't know what the hell she is. Are we really going to go by zodiac signs to determine a murder case, folks? She admitted to it. She knew what she did. It's not like she came to and said, what happened? I don't remember this. I just remember you going to the store. I mean, let's call it what it is, folks. This woman knew exactly what was going on around her. She was lucid during it. She did what she did. And then she tried to kill herself. Now, we could argue better health in this country, better watching over of what types of drugs you're on. But this does not stop this woman from, again, being culpable for what she did to her family. Not at all. None of it does. None of it does. And anyone who's trying to justify this, blame the husband, blame the drugs, is foolish to a T. And by the way, I've asked several of these women who, again, think it's the husband. Give me some evidence. Where's it show that the husband did this? What shows that the husband was there? And by the way, why would the defense and the prosecutors not see that it is the husband too, by the way? He was ruled out very early on that it could have been him. Yet all the women on Instagram and Facebook and TikTok know more than what the information is coming through. And you get the same thing from some of these women. And by the way, folks, I know it's not all women. But you hear this, are you watching the case? Are you watching the trial? I can see you're not. I go, give me the information. Stop trying to do a runaround on this. Where is this in the case that this woman is showing that the woman, is not the killer? Go ahead, give me your best shot. I get nothing in return from this. Usually, you're changing the story. I go, I'm not changing anything. Tell me where it shows that the husband could have even been culpable in any of this, when he's at two different locations and comes back after the murders took place. Again, agreed by the forensics. And you get nothing from him. Because it doesn't matter. It's just about supporting the woman. A woman who murdered her children. And I think this goes back into something a little bit deeper, folks. Where we think we can justify someone's horrible actions simply because of what sex they are. When it comes down to feminism as well, things of that nature. But notice none of the women outside of that courtroom are there for the children. They're there for her. Supporting her. Supporting her for what? And you're seeing some sick content, they're writing same Lindsay, they're putting, videos of them. I saw one, by the way. This disturbed me very, very much. It was very disquieting to see this. A woman with her very small infant child, and she just starts splashing water on the baby's face and starts laughing in the video. And again, I can't make any sense of this, folks. But what I think is happening here, again, you're seeing a group of women who will excuse the behavior of another woman simply because she's a woman. And by the way, I asked them this question, some of these women that are stalwart supporters of this murderer. I said, if it was the husband that did this, would you still be out there and supporting the husband then? Because he had a mental episode? If this is what you're claiming, you get nothing back. And then I asked another question. I said, is Lindsay responsible for what took place? Yes or no? Very simple question. Is she responsible for this that took place? Yes or no? I have yet to hear back from any of the plethora of women I engaged with. I don't think I'm going to hear back, folks. because there is no position to be had. It is a completely ridiculous sentiment to have that this woman is the victim here, and that the children that she murdered, her own children. And let me make this one last point to you before I move on. I've seen several men who have engaged with their significant other. I've seen text messages. Now, whether they're true or not, I don't know. But I've seen them saying, you're breaking up with me because I have an opinion on something. The guy goes, no. I just can't be with someone that would take so lightly what took place to be the mother of my children. That something like this is okay that took place. That you would support someone that did something like this, which, again, insinuates you think this is fine. And that's why I say to you folks, remember, when you're with a significant other, you have to understand something. Values mean everything. Values are what counts. The same structure, the same foundation, the same understanding. You can't break bread with someone who's out there putting a little heart sign to a woman that just strangled her 3 very young children to death, folks. I'll tell it to you how it is. That's the truth. Nothing justifies what took place on January 24th, 2023 with this woman in Massachusetts. Nothing. Not mental illness, not depression, not psychosis, not anxiety, not fatigue of caring for children. And again, folks, I know it's difficult to have kids. No one's saying it is. But of the hundreds of thousands of women every single year that are diagnosed with postpartum psychosis or postpartum depression, a very small percentage, very small, 1 to maybe 4% at all do anything in terms of neglect or harming their children. Very small cases that this takes place. This is not just a common occurrence. And for them to latch out of this case and suggest that this is okay, or that we're just supporting her for her mental health, get the hell out of here. What the hell's the matter with you? Definitely opens up some eyes for sure, folks. Oh, by the way, let me go close the show with this article. I want to go over this one on Friday as well. Let me talk to you about this. This is out of England, and a retired British police officer was actually handed a criminal conviction for more than £1,000, that's the British currency, in fines for resharing a satirical Facebook meme poking fun at Islam. Stephen Gray, 65, a former police officer who served for nearly 3 decades, found guilty under Section 127 of the Communications Act of 2003 for making a grossly offensive post on the internet, folks. Can you imagine that? Making a post on the internet? A police officer serving your community, serving your people? And of course, later on, you're found guilty of speech. Not actions, but of speech. Take a listen.
I got a phone call from my daughter, and she said, there's 2 uniformed police officers here, and they want to seize your shotgun and your certificate. So 15-minute drive home, went home, and they explained to me that somebody had made a complaint of racially aggravated Section 5 public order through Facebook posts. So give my shotgun over and license, and then I was given a name. I got in touch with the officer in the case, and I was invited to go down for an interview at Darlington Police Station under caution, which I did. And they put various Facebook posts to me, and I said, yes, I did that, and there was quite a few of them. And at the end of the interview, they said, right, with this having a sort of racial, religious element, we have to put it to the CPS.
So there you go, folks. You have, in the UK now, if you make a post about Islam, you could be very much held in response to, of course, your gun being taken away from you, getting a criminal conviction, being ostracized from certain clubs, and what have you. And what if that comes to the United States? Think about that. They say, well, you can't have a gun because look at the intention you place towards another religion. Notice how Christianity is fine and well to attack, to mock, to make fun of, to exclude. But if it's Islam, if it's Judaism, you're right for law enforcement to come to your home, take away your firearm. I can't wait for that to happen in the United States, folks. I just can't wait. Thanks again for being here, everybody. I'll see you tomorrow as always. Till next time, be good, stay busy. God bless.